You're so nice. I'm like, no.
All right, ladies. Hey, everyone. Again, happy Aloha Friday. Thank you so much. We are glued to our screens this morning, but this is how we do in the collab. We are virtual and we do not stop bringing the fire and we do not stop bringing the value. So today we have again Jaclyn Rideau and Dustin Cronhardt of the Karma Group, and they're dropping their knowledge and sharing their secrets on working with buyers in general. I dropped in an awesome PDF and supplemental document that goes along with this training. So you guys make sure you download that, take notes, lean in. This is awesome. Or, if you're like Jaclyn and you hate trees or you hate the land, print it out.
Yeah, how I do.
But without further delay, ladies, the floor is yours.
Mine's on an iPad, so I'm not a tree hater.
God.
Just giving you a hard time.
Judging much?
You guys, I'm Dustin. Me and Jaclyn run the Karma Group, which is a group of agents here on Oahu. So just in case you don't know who we are, I've been doing this about 7 years, 5 in Hawaii. So Hawaii is a little bit different market. So we'll just kind of, like Pume said, lean in to kind of what you should know. I'll start off by recapping Tuesday, where we talked about doing a buyer's consultation. So by the time you start working with a buyer, there's a few things that you should already know. You should know kind of, do they have kids? Do they have pets? Kind of what they're looking for. Do they need a garage? Things like that. So you should kind of know what their parameters are. You should have discussed money. You should have discussed a lender. They should be pre-approved. And you should have your buyer broker agreement signed the way Jaclyn taught you to, because she makes it super simple, super professional, and seems like it's just part of the deal, as it should be. So as we kick off now we've got our buyer, they've agreed to work with us, they've signed a contract. Now what do you do, right? Now what do you do? So for me, it's time to get them set up, one on a search. Doesn't matter how many people you put on how many searches, they're still going to use Zillow or some other website. So I try to send them as many resources as I can. Jaclyn can expand on this. You can set them up in your KV Core or any other system you have, or you can set them up in the MLS. I have a tendency to prefer the MLS with a home search, because Hawaii has some unique things like parking, which KV Core can't do. How many parking spaces does it have? You can set limits on the HOA amounts. Like if they're like, I won't pay over $500 a month, you can limit that on the MLS. You can't do that in KV Core. But then you still need them in KV Core or whatever CMR, maybe with something else like a market update, or they need to be in that system too, especially long term, where the MLS setup might be a short term while they're home hunting that you turn off later. Also, the MLS allows you to save their properties in a cart that you're doing. Like if they're sending you stuff, and like, we really like this, we really like this, you can stick them all in a cart, open that cart down the road when it's time to start scheduling for a day of appointments, and all the properties they like are right there. That you can click on them, you can showing time them, all of those things. So that's why I use the MLS. Jaclyn, do you use KV Core?
I do. So I actually really like KV Core, and I always tell my clients too, they're going to go to realtor.com. They're going to go to Redfin. They're going to go to Zillow. I've worked with several agents that actually don't like any of these platforms. So they don't like them because of the fact that most of the time they're just not updated. I actually think they're really user-friendly, and I don't have a technology bone in my body. So obviously you can see I print things out and still write on paper. So I actually welcome it. I tell my buyers all the time, whatever makes you feel that it's easiest for you to be able to search online. It could be my website. I set them up with alerts already on KV Core. If you want to go to Redfin, like I have a buyer right now that I'm communicating in her Redfin account. She shares her searches with me, and then we chat back and forth. However it works best. But what I always tell them is shoot me the MLS or shoot me the address, because I want to be able to clarify that this is actually not under contract. It's available. It's not in escrow, not showing. I want to make sure, things that they can't see in those private remarks, such as offers were due yesterday at 5. why am I going to start scheduling to see this house if it's already past its deadline? So another thing too is, you know, going with the HOA, they don't even look at that. So they'll just see a property at 550,000 and their max is 700, and I'll look and there's a $1,400 HOA. So I always, any property they're interested in, I don't care where they get it from, I'm always cross-referencing it to see if it's something that can potentially be seen. And then and unfortunately, I know everybody's going to judge me on this, but I actually keep a folder for all of my clients, and for every single listing they want to see appointments wise. I mean, I'm printing out like the MLSs, I'm putting notes on there, what they like, what they dislike, the time that we're seeing, open houses, so on and so forth, just to kind of keep me together in I guess in an area that makes sense. But everybody is going to do things differently. However you can kind of collaborate your time, put yourself on a schedule and be able to keep organized, do it, right? But definitely, Dustin, I really like using KV Core. I like setting those alerts, but sometimes you can't do everything. I have a buyer that I'm working with right now that is all over the island. I'm not talking like just leeward side and wanting to see like Kapolei. I mean, we were in Kaneohe yesterday, we were in Mililani, then they want to go to Waikai. They love everything. So that's really hard in KV Core, right? Because when you're going with the alerts, I don't want like all these properties just mixed together. I like sending them just Kaneohe or just Aiea or just Mililani. So I have to kind of regroup and separate things, however it's going to work best for me and how it's going to be easy for them to understand.
Sure. And also, you guys, if you don't have MLS Touch on your phone, you really should. It's the mobile MLS. KV Core can be great. The MLS search can be great. Neither one of them are mobile apps. All of them you need to be on the web to use it. The MLS Touch, you can actually send them a link to a mobile app they can put on their phone. And I have all my clients save properties in there. You can add personal notes, you can chat through it. So it's another good resource. I know there's other programs out there that other people use, but why not use the free ones like the MLS? It's free. KV Core is free for us. You know, our MLS access is free for us. So it's just real important that, you know, you get a good search rolling for them. A lot of times I'll open a search that's really broad and then we start to bring it in as they're like, I don't want to live here, or I don't like it over there, or whatever their reasoning happens to be. So get a good search going for them and find the way to communicate. Redfin has a really friendly app. It's one of the best ones, I think, on the market. So I have a lot of people use Redfin. Don't take any offense to it at all.
I'm using that right now too.
Whatever, however you find the house, that's fine. Then you really, again, we've got to talk about the pace of the market, because now you have to set up showings, right? They send you a house they want, and you've got to set up a showing. And in order to do that, you need to explain, we can't set this up next week. It won't be on the market next week. You know, we've got to get a list of houses at the beginning of this week, see them by Sunday, and decide if we're making offers or not. So I think setting those expectations, you can't show houses, you know, that are already in escrow. That's silly. So you have to make sure they understand that they can't find it and then disappear for a week because of their schedule and then expect to see it the following week. I have people off island that are like, I'm making a list for when we get there. And I'm like, you get here next month, that list will be non-existent. You're wasting your time. So again, I think, you know, you've got to get them prepared for what the pace of the market is doing. That also happens in the parameters that if they're approved at 800,000, well, they need to be looking at 750 because they're going to be offering 800,000. So again, you've got to control the expectations, help them understand why you're setting the parameters the way you are. You know, and you can take it up to 8, but if they're going to look at an $800,000 property, they better be ready to spend 850, 875, even 9. Just depending. So,
and something going off of that too, Dustin, is keep track of your HOA amounts too. So a lot of the times they're going to see properties, let's say the property is 750, they got approved for 8, but then the HOA is 750. So I'm not sure how you guys always go with rule of thumb, but me and Dustin, for every $500 in an HOA, we add another $100,000 to their pre-approval. Okay, so if they're looking at a house that's 750 and they have an HOA that's 521, then in essence, we're looking at a property that's $850. Does that make sense? So again, I have a lot of clients that will end up looking at these condos, downtown, and they got approved for 400, and they're like, oh my gosh, I love this condo. It's only 250. And I'm like, right, but the HOA is $1,700. So at that point, it's over your budget. They don't understand that. So you have to be able to talk to them about that too.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that too, because this comes back to your lender. We have a favorite lender. We do. His name's Ryland. You heard from him if you were in the last Zoom there with Clayton, who was on fire, by the way. We really love Ryland. When we get a pre-approval from Ryland, it'll actually say they're approved at 800 with no HOA and 650 with a 500 HOA. And he sends that to the client as well as us, so that we're not having to explain that. That comes right from the guy who's going to lend you the money's mouth, right? He's saying, I can't lend you more than 650 with a 500 HOA. Sometimes it's not how much he can lend, but their parameters are like, I don't want to spend more than $3,500 a month. Ryland will say, to stay in $3,500 a month, you can do this amount without an HOA, or this amount with an HOA around 500, and then that's a seesaw. If it's 700, the price needs to come down. If it's 1,000, it needs to come down. If it's only 300, your price can go up a little. So it's like a seesaw for me, and that's how I tell people to understand it. And our lender's really helpful in setting those parameters as well, so they understand how HOA affects their bottom line as well as their offer prices, right, of what they can afford to buy. So I think that's real important. So again, we're just talking about price and schools and areas, just trying to hone in, get their search really good. And I think this is a cool conversation, and I think everybody in here ought to chime in how they feel about it that's doing business or doing some business now. Is, do your clients ride in the car with you, or do you meet them at the property? And what do you think the pros and cons of that are?
I will tell you something that Travis Ferris told me when we were first training. Now, granted, this was like pre-COVID.
Pre.
Like, I think this was like 2019. He's like, I want them in the car with me. I want them in the car with me. I want to hear their concerns. I want to hear their their objections, because I also want to be able to handle them. During COVID, I'm not going to lie, it was nice to not have to clean my car. But I agree with that. And for the newer agents, it could definitely be scary. But just simply asking questions, not for the newer agents, not necessarily like providing their opinions or anything, unless they have very strong ones, but asking questions, getting to know what's important to them. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, there's a big dynamic too, especially when you're dealing with couples. When they get in the car after the house and they start talking about it, they often disagree or agree, and you can learn a lot just by them being in the car. You take on some liability. Most companies require that you carry a certain amount of insurance, because if you wreck with a client in the car, there's liabilities to that. So you really ought to know something about that. If a client just wants to see one house, I'm not going to try to figure out how to drive them there. We're going to meet there. But if they're seeing multiple houses, I try to find a central place for somebody to leave a car, and we pile in, don't waste gas. Jaclyn, what's your take on that?
So I actually always, pre-COVID, I usually always put the client in the car. But after having kids, now I have car seats, and I don't like to have to take them in and out. It's more of my convenience. Kind of going in with their opinions, how they talk. You're obviously going to carry a really good relationship with your client and have it be personal, but I still think that they're going to act differently and say different things whenever they're not around you. So I personally like to have them meet me at a property. They do not get in the car with me, because then that way, whenever they go from property to property, they can just talk freely, say what they want. Now, what I do is I always break my day up. So if I'm showing all day, like yesterday, I was showing from 8:45 until 5:30. What I do is I take a break for about an hour and a half in the middle of the day. I treat them to lunch. and I take out all of the homes that we've seen so far, and I write, I probably have in my trash now, but I don't know if you guys can see. On like MLSs, I write all the goods and bads, what their concerns were, you know, as they're starting to go through the property, what questions we have for the listing agent and so on. And then when we sit down at lunch, I spread it all out on the table. We start zoning in, and they'll just be like, no, take that one off the list because I really didn't like how far of a drive it was. Bam, we're done. Then they could say, oh yeah, that's still a contender. You know, maybe we need some comps. I write some comps on there. Then I go, okay, this is going into our afternoon. We have these 4 properties to see. Now that you saw the 4 properties from this morning, how do you feel about the lot size on this one? And they'll just be like, oh, you know, that was around the same backyard space. And I remember that it was too small, you know, earlier this morning. You think it's going to be any bigger? I'm like, nope. They're like, okay, well, can we cancel that appointment? Yes. So then at that point in time, I'm able to like reschedule, cancel, bump things up. It gives them a break. It makes it where they're not starving and exhausted like how we are. If I need to make any phone calls, going along with that, they're able to talk in the car privately. Dustin always talks to me about this, but if you've ever seen, I want to say Pume probably put it on Facebook one time when there was like a cat driving and they're like going like this and like typing on their phone and they're getting in accidents and jumping curbs. That's like me driving. So for me, I connect everything to my Bluetooth. I'm making all these phone calls in between every single showing. I'm getting work done. I'm like connecting to the Wi-Fi in my car. I've got my laptop. I've done Zoom calls from my laptop in my passenger seat going to like Kaneohe for a showing. So for me, I'm like, that's time that I could be working with other clients or something else. So I'd rather not have the client in there with me, or sometimes you just want to listen to the radio and stop talking for 15 minutes because you're talking all day. So I like having that break. So all in that, I don't have them in the car with me unless they didn't rent a car. They're in town. I need to come and pick them up. Obviously, it's all case by case basis.
Yeah, a lot of times people are new in town. They don't have a car, and I'm picking them up at the hotel and
Or
driving.
the wife doesn't drive. I mean, those are situations you can take them case by case basis.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think it's good to think about it, maybe try both, see which way you're more comfortable in the way you do business. Yeah, when I'm showing all day, I don't look at my phone. I don't talk about anybody but that one client. So I do it completely different unless it's an emergency. I don't, I time out. So so we all do it a little bit different. A lot of times when it's the first time out with a client, I like to pick homes off their list, maybe in different areas, like one in Eva, one in Mililani, and do the tour in between, like we're going to go the long way so we can go up and over the H3 so you can see this drive, on our way to Kaneohe. I like to do that sometimes. I definitely plan a path. I definitely try to plan lunch in an area where I think they might live. Like this is my favorite restaurant in this area. And I do act as a tour guide to people that are new to the island. Now, when you're dealing with somebody who already lives here, who knows exactly where they want to live, that's super simple too, super simple. But I do think it's important to really start to learn fast, pay attention, which brings us to the next section of what we're going to talk about, and that is honing your skills. Buyers give you a lot of tells when they're in a property, and you find out a bunch of things you don't know. I'll give you a couple examples. I'm walking a property with a client, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, this is where the piano will go. And I'm like, oh, so we're looking for room for a piano now. Like that wasn't on their list when they gave me the 4 bedrooms, 3 bath list. Was it like,
it's not a baby grand, it's a grant.
It's a grant. I mean, and then you're like, what size piano? I don't know what you're talking about. I was shopping condos the other day with a single guy, and we found one that was a lower floor with a little yard. And I'm like, do you like having the outdoor space, or would you rather have a balcony? And he says, Henry would tear this yard up. And I'm like, who the hell is Henry? It's his dog. Now I'm like, but we're looking at condos. I wasn't even thinking about pets because he didn't tell me he had one. I had a couple from Australia that were moving here from Australia that were bringing 250 bottles of wine with them, and they needed a cool, dark place to store them. So they kept going into weird spaces under the stairs and closets. And I'm like, what are you looking for? And they're like, a place for our wine. And I'm like, that was not on my list. I dealt with a Hispanic family that was just a single couple with no kids, and they were looking at 4 bedrooms. And I'm like, why are you pushing your price limit for so much space? Well, because they're Hispanic and they have 100 people visit at a time, not one. And so these are the things people say, and you've got to really pay attention to them for sure. And when you're not paying attention to them, you're paying attention to the house. Is that correct, Jaclyn? I'll let you take that section.
Yes, because I dealt with that a couple of times just yesterday. So when you have clients that are going into a house, they most of the time, now I'm going to go with let's say first time home buyers. Because usually when you've got these flippers or seasoned, purchasers, they look at homes completely different. But they start going through and they're like, oh my gosh, I love these countertops. And they go through the kitchen. Oh my gosh, that view. As they're doing all of that, none of that should matter to you, right? Because this is not your house. Who cares if the cabinets are white? What I'm doing is they're looking up and through, I'm looking down and around. So as they start going, to that gorgeous ocean view and they bypass everything, I'm looking at, why are all the baseboards ripped up on this one side? I'm walking through and I'm like, okay, on this vinyl plank flooring, it's clicking a lot. It must be sitting directly on concrete. There's no type of moisture barrier. I'm starting to notice if this was lifting. Was there a water issue here in the kitchen before? I'm noticing rust in a lot of the appliances. There must be a lot of moisture coming in here. Like, we're going to have to worry about that. As they start going upstairs, they're like, oh yeah, I love this. And it's so narrow. And I'm like, okay, but there's no banister. How is that going to pass with like VA financing? So you're going to start looking through all of these things. You need to start inspecting the property and start paying attention to that. We saw a condo yesterday that was actually really nice. But I'm noticing a lot of flaws, and it wasn't flaws that were going to be like red flagged on the inspection. This was TLC issues. And Dustin and I talk about that all the time. I look at things like pet stains on the carpet that weren't cleaned up, air filters that are completely dirty. I'm noticing, like baseboards and moisture on the floor, or like a piece of flooring missing. If the sellers aren't putting that type of TLC into a home prior to showing, and how long it's been like that before, are they really going to be taking care of the house as much as you'd want your buyers to be investing into it? So you can look at a house that needs new appliances, a new countertop, but it can be very well maintained. That to me is a better contract than somebody that redid the countertops, but then everything else looks like it's falling apart. It's just kind of like those home projects that should have been done. So you need to, if you have never purchased a home before, if you've never done your own type of remodeling projects, I know Dustin Pumi and myself have all been involved in that. I have a pink drill. So if you haven't been able to have that experience, I would highly recommend that you befriend a home inspector and you go to all of these home inspections, even if they can have you, maybe shadow with them or whatnot. If you have any questions, be in a really good relationship that you can ask them, that you could send videos. With our home inspector, I literally text him at 10 o'clock at night. I mean, he probably isn't a fan of that, but whenever I have questions for something, and it just makes it so that you can have your client's best interests on everything, because they are putting all of their money into this investment, and you've got to be able to protect them however you can. And there are, let's say, 2 homes, same price point. One, lacks all the TLC, and then the other one needs all these upgrades. I would go with the one that needs the upgrades and looks like it was completely taken care of and original to 2005. You know what I mean? So your clients are going to be asking your opinion. It's their house, but they're always going to be going to you because you're the expert. So definitely, try to zone in on all of those inspection aspects. Kind of going a little bit further, Dustin and I were actually just talking about this, but it actually makes your client a little bit more aware too. So I have a contract right now that we're stopping like every week, it seems like, because of something. But when we were originally looking at this condo, I'm walking around and I'm like, I noticed that the floors are like really soft, and I'm like, okay, I'm in my mind, there's got to be some like moisture issues here. And I'm looking around, and then I go into the laundry room, and in the corner, I see like a bunch of, it looks like coffee ground material. And I'm like, okay, looks like we've got termites. And I'm not saying any of this out loud. I'm just like taking note as they're looking in the bedrooms. Oh my gosh, I love the way they did this bathroom. I'm just like looking around the property to see what's going on. Also, we are under contract, but they were like, what should we list? I mean, what should we, ask to get our offer accepted? I've already done all the comps because I know this was their favorite. So I'm like, this is what we need to do to be aggressive. But looking at the comps in this area, I don't think it's going to go that high with the appraisal. Most likely you're going to have a low appraisal. So we need to start talking about appraisal gap clauses. What were my 3 red flags on that property? Moisture in the main living area that we already talked about. Termites, we already talked about that. And we ended up getting a tidewater on our appraisal. They already knew. So the entire time throughout this process, when I call them and I'm like, oh, we got positive for our termite report, they're like, okay, so what do we do? There's no concern. We've already talked about it. Then we've got, the inspector comes in. Okay, there's moisture, a foot going up the wall. There had to have been some type of issue with water. We already talked about that, before we even put a contract in that we were replacing all the floors and we had to bring a plumber in. There could be an active leak. So it's just really nice to be able to have those conversations so that it's not so much of a shock factor later on, that you could just keep things rolling and keep things smooth.
Yeah, I agree. And you guys, we're not home inspectors and we're not pest inspectors. And we can make that really clear to the buyer, but still say, look, I've walked 100 homes, with my home inspector, and he's taught me what to look for. This is a little bit of a red flag. And I think when this is probably going to turn up on your home inspection. It keeps the shock factor down. Sometimes it's not care or TLC. Maybe it's something they completely overlook. Like, how many of us have been in a house that's all windows and you're like, where would you put your TV? Like, and these people have an 80-inch TV and the husband's a gamer, and there is not a wall to hang it on. And they don't see that because the home is maybe vacant and they don't even think about it. Or the kitchen counters are sparkly and beautiful and brand new. There isn't a pantry. Where are you going to store your food? Those are the kind of things that you need to be thinking practical while they're daydreaming and living and staring at views and sparkly counters or whatever's got their attention. Is you've got to continue to bring them back to reality, because you don't want them to get this home and then be disappointed because they don't know how to live in it or because their things won't fit. You've got to pay attention when they say, I have an 8-foot farmhouse table. Now you've really got to start watching. It also helps you from wasting your time when you're setting up showings. They send you a home and you're like, go back and look at the picture, that there's no way your table's going to fit in this house. Are you willing to sell it, or should we just take this one off the list? Because there's no reason to walk in and show 8 homes that they're like, my table doesn't fit, my table doesn't fit, my table doesn't fit. Try to get this sorted out early on and don't waste your time. So I think it's also really important to spend time outside the home, walking around the outside, peeking over the fence at the neighbors. Sometimes I'll be like, let's say you're in Sea Country, there's the country stores right there, right? I'm like, why don't we walk over to the country store and get something cold to drink and get a feel for the neighborhood? You don't want them moving in and not enjoying it. It's even more important if people are buying sight unseen on video that you do more than this inside of the house, but the outside of the house, showing the neighbors, which always gets clipped out of the good pictures on the MLS, is the neighbor that's a hoarder with 8 cars and a Jeep up with no tires. That won't be in the picture. Or you're there and there's 8 barking dogs in the neighbor's backyard. Film that. Be honest, because trust me, you don't want your client finding out after the fact that you didn't show them that. So,
and you can be discreet when it comes to that too. So
Yeah.
Let's say they all have their opinions, right? I love Waianae. Okay. But the drive through Waianae works for some people and it doesn't work for some people. So I always take a video of my drive to the property. If they're not on island, don't look to your left as you're driving through there and say, okay, I just wanted you to notice all the homeless camps and make sure that you're comfortable with this. You obviously don't say that. You just have it on video so they can see, and you're like, oh, look at that view, like the ocean's so great. If they take it upon themselves to like look at all of that and they're like, I really don't like that drive, let them make that decision, right?
Sure. You never voice your opinion of the neighborhood. You
Same
just
thing with
show
barking
it.
dogs.
You just
I've
show
had
it.
that
You
before
just
too.
like, oh, the neighbors have dogs. Like, that's all you got to say.
Right. And I'm outside
So
the entire time and the dog is barking the
if you're
entire time.
right, if you're driving the neighborhood
That's
and it's one of those neighborhoods where there's so many cars parked, you can barely get up the street, film that. Just be
Mhm.
like, I wonder if parking is an issue in this neighborhood. There's a lot of cars on the street. And some people care, some people don't care. It's their decision. But you want to at least show it to them so that they can make that decision. You don't want, because I work with a lot of sight unseen buyers. You don't want them to drive that neighborhood and be like, why didn't you tell us these cars were everywhere and there's nowhere to park? You know, like that, you just have to do those things. So it's just about being really conscious of that. Hey, Jaclyn, do you want to do personalities or do you want me to?
Yeah, and I was actually just gonna finish on honing the skills. Listen for their body language. You know, looking at their facial expressions. So there are a lot of times that, you know, you'll just see this excitement. They're smiling the whole time. Oh my gosh, like my daughter's room and it'd be perfect. And oh my gosh, the view. And they just get like so excited. Then you go into other properties and they're quiet. And they're like, yeah, you know, and they're just giving like a different vibe altogether. Then when you start looking through, you sit down at lunch and you start looking through some of these properties, you could be like, you didn't seem super excited about that last one. And they'll be like, yeah, I mean, there was just, it was fine, blah, blah. And I'm like, nope, let's cross it off the list. Like you weren't absolutely in love with it. Let's move on. We're talking about another one. You know what I mean? So really start understanding like what their facial expressions are, their body language. You know, we wear 15 different hats. That's going to be the one of the hats to wear.
Yeah, I sound like the person when you go get your eyes checked. You put the two MLS, A or B,
or two,
A or B,
yeah.
1 or 2, 1 or 2, and they'll be like 1, and then 2 just gets thrown away. 1 or 4, 1 or 4, 4, good, 1's gone. Like, and you just like, because why, you know, or if they can't decide, then say, okay, we're going to keep them both in the pile. But don't waste your time on properties they don't really want. Just get them to decide. And then when you start looking, you can be like, is this one better than the last one or worse than the last one? And they're like, oh, we like the last one way better. I'm like, let's get in the car and move on then. Like, just done. Like, no need to just talk. You just talk to them. Don't waste your time, for sure. If you can not waste your time, don't waste it.
Okay, perfect. So you want to start talking about the types of buyers because there's so many different kinds.
No, I was talking about the personality types. Are you familiar
Okay.
with these charts? Because I'm pretty familiar.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I just did an HBR class on sellers where they had you do these charts, and they're like, so that you could kind of determine like what kind of information you're going to take. Jackie, not Jaclyn, can just attest to this. Yesterday, she brought a comparable market report, but it was very minimal because she doesn't like to overwhelm people. But the guy we got talking to is an engineer, and all he's like, where's more numbers? Where's more graphs? Where's the meat? Like, that's what he needed. And we didn't know that until we're talking to him, right? So people definitely have a distinct style and a distinct personality type. I'm sure everyone on here on a disc scale can tell that I'm very yellow. My personality is very distinct. I'm sure everybody could probably pick their own personalities out of here. The colors on the disc one below are not the same as the one above. So definitely read them. I love the good day and the bad day on these discs. So definitely read through them. And when you're talking to a buyer, I bet you can figure out what category they fall into. And then, and if that's what they really like some people are just kind of quiet, you know, and you've got to kind of bring stuff out of them. Some people are really analytical. And they want the numbers, right? Or the graphs. I think that's really, some people are really hyper. Not me, kidding. I'm always like, let's go, let's do it, let's go. But on a bad day for me, I completely shut down. Like, I'm either all on or all off. I don't have a lot of middle ground. And so, and people that have to work with me know that. So kind of try to study these a little bit, read up on them. I think it's just really important to try to understand what kind of personality you're working with so that you can, you know, adjust the way you're giving them information to suit their personality, the way they would want it. So this is like real estate love language. You know, when you deal with a relationship, everybody has a love language. I don't know if you've ever read the love languages, but it's very interesting. Some people like gifts and diamonds and roses, and some people would rather see their husband do laundry or clean, or some people just need hugs and affection. And so learning these personalities is like learning your real estate love language with your clients. Try to figure out what their language is and then communicate in that style to them so that they can decipher the information the best they can. Yeah, you can move on to the types of buyers now. Which one do you want to tackle?
Perfect. Let me see. What is my favorite one to work with? Definitely not the tire kicker. Let's talk about.
Nobody likes a tire kicker.
Nobody
Everyone
likes
wants their
tire
time
kickers.
wasted.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and start. What's the first one? Am I looking at the right page, the one at a timer?
Yeah, do the one at the timer.
Okay, I actually have one of those now.
I do too.
So
I have 2 of those.
yeah, so I've got my one at a timer is exactly how it seems. I have, this couple, they're really excited about, they've actually been on island for a year renting. I've been talking to them for over a year. And now they've decided that they want to retire here and they want to be able to make this their forever home. And they've already zoned in on the areas they like. Well, it starts off in the beginning where they send you 50 houses and I want to see all of this stuff, right? But then what they'll do is they'll kind of just die on you. You won't hear from them for 3 days. And then it'll just be out of the blue, like this morning, I think at 9 o'clock, they'll be like, I really want to see this property today and I want to put in an offer. One house, right? So you're like, okay, well, I've been sending you things, the last couple of days, and kind of what Dustin was saying, like they're all under contract now, and I will literally show one house at a time. Like I have a 12:30 with them today. And I'm like, anything else you'd like to see? Like, there's actually another one down the street if you want to do in comparison. No, they just want one house. We'll see if we like it. I won't hear from them for 4 days. Then they just want to see one more house. Then we'll look at that one. They say yay or nay. It'll be another week. It's very much at their own pace. So what I usually do is in the beginning, when I first start working with a buyer, I check the MLS 1 to 2 times a day. Okay. And I'll send them anything that I think is on the hot sheet. When they start slowing down like that and it turns into a one at a timer, what I'll usually do is when I hear from them. So like today, I heard from her. So when I get off of here, then I'll send her like what's on the hot sheet and she'll look through it. Okay. So this isn't the type of person that I'm sending them things like every single day and zoning in on their personality. She usually doesn't look at everything that I send her. She's the type of person that just wants to like look on Zillow herself. And then once she likes something, she's just going to let me know. So we have that type of communication with each other.
Mine reach out about every 3 or 4 months and be like, look what we found. And I'm like, great. Do you want to see it? And they're like, I'm busy this week. And I'm like, okay, well, let me know when you're not busy.
Right. So this one, just like how it ends on this draft that Dustin made up for you guys, just be patient. For me, I'm like that D personality, go, 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 get it done. It's business. Like I work really well with investors. So for me, it's really hard to like be accommodating and patient with people that are running so slowly. It's like getting your kids ready in the morning to go to school and you have to leave in 10 minutes and they're just choosing what color sock, no type of care in the world, no sort of urgency. Like that's how I could possibly describe like one at a timer. You just have to take a step back, go with what they want to do. Keep, you're always going to have, well, not always, like yesterday, I didn't have any time in my day, but you usually have blocks in your day. So like when they get a hold of me, like this morning and say, I really want to see this house. Okay, I've got, like availability today, about an hour. Let's go see it that time. Like you can try to accommodate them the best that you know how. And sometimes it won't work out. I've had my one at a timer, reach out to me a couple times. I think on Tuesday and I was back to back and she's like, I want to see this house. And I'm like, unfortunately, I cannot show you. I have other agents that, I can have meet with you if you really want to see that house. Oh, no, I'll just get back with you on Thursday. And now it's already under contract. So, I mean, they just kind of like go at their own pace. Nothing is of a concern.
I will
And
say, don't give up on them though either.
no,
I had somebody who decided to rent. They decided not to buy. They reached out to me in the middle of COVID. They're like, we popped in an open house. We want to make an offer. And we wrote an over $1 million contract, and they hadn't looked at a house in 8 months. So it's just an unusual thing, but
they just pop out of nowhere.
yeah, just for time's sake, I'm going to move along. The excited all at oncer is next on the list. I deal with these people a lot. This is really great. This is for me, this is usually a military person in a hotel with a deadline. They got like, I got 60 days. I got 60 days, you know, and they land and they're like, here's the 15 homes I want to see. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute, you know, and you're trying to figure out. Actually, when I know they're coming in town, I often block almost my whole week. Like I make sure my week is like ready for them. And again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I like to pick out the first day a few houses in each area and kind of tour them around, because that might help eliminate a lot of the homes on the list. Sometimes I will, if they have a car, I will say, get in your car and do a drive-by. Go explore today. I'm busy. I have an appointment today. I can't take you out. Why don't you go explore today? Drive by all these addresses and make sure you still really want to see them. And then we'll set them up for tomorrow or the next day. And you'd be amazed at how fast that list gets cut in half when they do that. So I think that's really good. And I think planning is really key when you're going to see, when somebody has 15 homes. I definitely would try to split it up, you know, and try to get all of one area in one day and all of another area in another day. Like if they're kind of got stuff in the west side, but the other sides are leeward, I wouldn't try to do those all in one day. I would say we're going to have to split this up to make this happen. And then I use a route planner, which you can just Google route planner, and there's a whole bunch of them online where you could put your starting point, which is maybe where you're meeting them to put you in the car, right? And then you drop in all the addresses that you're going to go to, and you say, plan the fastest route. And then it reorganizes all the addresses for you. A route planner does. And then
I usually go in a circle. So
Yeah.
I'll start at like one,
So
and
does
it
the
goes
route
all the way
planner.
around and then ends exactly where we started.
So does the route. That's exactly what the route planner does. It gives you a really good path to get back to where you started. And, or you can do a start and an end point. You don't have to go back. You don't have to circle back to a location. But the route planner really helps me organize what order I'm going to put the showings in. And then I'll know like Eva, these can all be really close together. And then 3 in Mililani, I need to give myself 30 minutes to get there, you know, or maybe that's a good time to break for lunch. So getting organized is really important when you're dealing with this person where you're going to see a whole bunch of properties at once. I don't usually recommend more than 8, but I've done as many as 15 in a day. So, and like Jaclyn said, stop for lunch. And then you've really got to stay on top, you know, 1, 2, 2, 3, 1, 3, 3, 5, like, you know, and you really just got to start eliminating. And Jaclyn said too, you can look forward to what you're going to do later in the day and be like, you know, everything we've been in that's 1,300 square feet or smaller, it has been a no-go for you. Should we just not be looking at stuff that isn't bigger than that? You know, and you're really, and you could just, this is a really good way to hone in. That's why I like the first day to kind of break it up and go to different areas. And then really, you can really narrow it in because you're going to know a lot more about them. So
Perfect.
Any questions about that? Okay, go ahead, Jaclyn, hit it.
I'll start talking about the analyzer. So the best person I could possibly describe with this is going to be an investor. So I work with investors that sometimes want to see the house, sometimes they want me to video it, sometimes they don't care. It's just sight unseen because they're going to tear it down anyway. These are the people that want all of their numbers. As you start getting used to it, and I think the other Jackie actually had a listing appointment the other day where she had to, you know, work with this a little bit. But as you start getting to know these clients and you know that they're going to want these numbers, You just give it to them first and foremost. So you don't go and look at homes and then they're like, oh, what are the comps in the area? And you're like, I don't know, I'll check into that. Oh, do you know what the house sold for next door? Because there's a for sale sign. No, but I'll check into that. Don't do that on those type of buyers. You're going to want all of that information before even seeing these houses. So with investors, what I do, if I search the MLS for some of my active clients, and I see a tear down that looks like it's under, priced in Kaneohe, I'll just make a mental note and be like, oh, let me write that MLS number down because I could send that to an investor. I don't just send him the MLS and say, hey, what do you think? You want to go see it? I have an entire Excel spreadsheet that I work off of his. I start doing all of my RPR reports. I get everything in that neighborhood before I even bother with, having to contact them or not. And then I zone in, I look at it, I'm like, okay, what can he get for like large margins on this property? What can we possibly get it for? What are they appraising at? Like what's closing in that neighborhood? So I have all of that together. I'll send him like a text message and say, hey, I'm sending you an email on a property I think that could be a great flip opportunity. And I have Excel spreadsheets. I have all of my numbers. I have everything, bam, already sent to him. So he could look that over and then he makes an informed decision if he even wants to see it or not. So this is not going to be the same exact buyer where you've got 10 MLS sheets and you spend your entire day. Their time is money. So they're definitely going to be the type of people that they're going to want to know numbers. They don't want their time wasted. They want to know like price per square foot. They want graphs. They want Excel spreadsheets. So you're going to have to, be able to tweak your, I guess, attitude towards that buyer a little bit more. They are not as emotionally attached in these ones that I've usually seen. They're numbers people. Okay, so you're just going to have to get used to that and do a lot of homework before seeing any of these houses. I think you kind of talked about under pressure buyer a little bit already, Dustin. Do you want to talk about that one, especially with like a military buyer?
Yeah, I'll touch on it again, and I'll touch on the analyzer a little bit. If they're not an investor, so they're not looking at like stuff she's talking about, like the return on investment stuff, and they're an actual buyer that's like Jackie's seller, that's an engineer and just loves numbers. And if they're going to look at 8 houses, let's say this is an analyzer with a time crunch that wants to see a bunch of houses at once. Again, I use an Excel sheet for that. I'll put down all the square footage, price per square footage, price, anything else that they deem really important, like garage, no garage, what the school is. If they have a high schooler, I'll just focus in on the school and get it on a sheet where he can go, okay, this one's this much per square foot, this one's this much per square foot, or this one's bigger, but this price is lower. I just give them the numbers to look at right up front. So I just, back to the spreadsheet with an analyzer is just gold. Yeah, under pressure buyer too, they're in a hurry. I have one of those now that they're running out of time. They're under a lot of pressure and they're just like, we got to make an offer. We got to make an offer. We got to win. We got to win. And yeah, it's just important to know people's timelines, know their goals, know their needs, and just try to be ready for them to work with them for sure.
I will end with the brain sucker because I'm always the queen of no, right? I have no problems saying no in 10 different languages to somebody. And I have people all the time reaching out to me. This is going to be the person I don't like working with the most and the one I usually don't, because of the fact that they have no loyalty or commitment to you. Okay, so these are the ones that are going to want all of this information, but they're asking about all of this information to 3 different agents. They don't feel comfortable signing a buyer agency agreement. They want to know everything about neighborhoods. They want to know comps. They're time suckers in essence, but they're not committing to you. And for me, I'm not going to take, now it's a little bit different. Let's separate just a lead and answering questions, right? So if they need, help being able to get a pet over here or something like that, obviously you're going to try to help as much as possible, regardless if they're going to buy a house with you or not. But this is going to be the person that's an active lead. They want to look at properties. You might have shown them some properties, but they are just like, they're not going to commit to you. They're not going to sign a buyer agency agreement. They pretty much are talking to multiple agents, whoever is going to be able to get them under contract. They have no loyalty, usually in these cases. And For me, I mean, just like how Dustin said, they're wanting to use you for your expertise, but then they just don't want to pay you for it. Absolutely not. Right. So you're not going to go to a lawyer and, say, oh, hey, I need all this free advice because I'm going into a murder trial. And he's going to be like, sure, let me just give you all of this. And then there's no retainer, there's no contracts, like just absolutely not.
I'll tag on to that too, because you guys, if they're working with another agent, you can't talk to them. It happens to me all the time. Somebody from a Facebook group, because I'm very active in there and they know I'm very friendly and helpful, they'll reach out to me and they'll be like, my agent's telling us we need to do this and it's not working and our offers aren't getting accepted. And what do you think about our tactics? And I'm like, I can't talk to you about that. Like, just know your code of ethics. If they're already working with somebody, you just can't. You can't say that agent's stupid and I can't believe they told you that. You can't say that.
I've had buyers come to me before and say, oh, so we really like this property and our agent, like it starts off with that. Our agent wants us to offer this much, but we don't feel comfortable with that and we want to offer this much. How much do you think you would offer on this house?
Yeah.
I don't know. Agent. I'm not your agent.
I'm not looking it up for you. Don't let people
Absolutely
do that
not.
to you. I know you get excited to talk to people about real estate. We all do. I love talking about real estate. I eat it, live it, breathe it pretty much all the time. But don't let people do this to you. Don't let them get your services for free. Be careful how you give your services out. You want to dole out enough information so they know you're valuable, but if they're not going to commit to you, you've got to draw the line.
This is your business. You run your business. You're not working for anybody else. You dictate who you work with.
I'm going to circle back really quick at the end to the previous collab meeting in Clayton Gentz and how he talked about not competing in this market, but dominating. And he talked about, just because Jaclyn said it a few times, the hot sheet in the MLS. And he talked about MLS agents. And he said, there's homes out there for sale. Sometimes you just got to reach out and talk to people who haven't decided they're selling yet. And so I think Jackie's really good at this. She's on the Karma group. She lives in a big condo building and she walks her dogs a lot. And she's like, I got people looking in this building. Are you thinking about selling? We got an appointment that way. And so that's thinking outside the box, catching people before their homes are even on the market and finding properties. Right. And so go back and watch that recording too, because he talks a lot about how to get these buyers in your loop and how to service them really well. And I think that's about it for us, unless people have questions.
No, anybody got it? That was awesome. Oh my goodness. Where were you?
Lots of information. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for zooming in. I know it's kind of going into like your late morning on Aloha Friday, but we more than appreciate you guys attending, supporting. If at any point in time in any of the Zoom classes that we have, you guys have any questions or concerns, Dustin and myself are open books. Always feel that you can reach out to us. You can text us, email us, call us. You are never going to be a bother. We talk about real estate all the time. This is our passion. This is our business. And we love being able to educate and help people the way we would have liked help being new agents. Right?
I can tell you for sure. Yeah, I can tell you for sure, if you're more a personality like Jaclyn and you're all business and it's like, let's just get it done, put on your good big girl pants, quit whining, you should probably talk to me so I can help you soften yourself. If you're a big softie and people are constantly walking on you and taking advantage of you, then you should call her because she's going to be like, stop it and run a business. And so that's why us together, yin and yang, so well, is because we're learning from each other. And then so we're always happy to help you guys learn too.
Love it. Thank you so much. And that just right there, you said the yin and yang of it is exactly why we want to be putting on these trainings, right? Because there is, you guys, I'm gonna hold on. You guys, there was more than one way to do real estate. There was more than one way to do real estate.
More than 10 ways.
More than yeah, exactly that. And what
there's more than 20, but only 10 are good.
Exactly. What we're here to do in the collab is to make sure that you know what works well for you and what works well. Like, we are training you guys to be not just good agents, but great agents. And there's more than one way to be a great agent. So thank you, thank you, thank you to you ladies. Thank you to everybody who chimed in. We really appreciate you. We really appreciate you. But again, yes, to be respectful and mindful and honor everybody's time, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We will have the recording available later on today. And thank you, thank you, thank you. And make it a great day, guys. Oh, and
Aloha
happy
Friday.
Mother's Day to the mamas.
Oh, yes. Happy Mother's Day early.
All right,
Happy Mama's
guys.
Day.
Aloha
Take
Friday.
care. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.